Hello, everybody, and thanks for joining us in our second NIFC ArcGIS Online Organization webinar. This is the first technical one, and the focus of this webinar is Collector. I would first like to start by introducing the group of folks that we have on the phone to help support using Collector during the fire season this year. The NIFC admins, some of them are on the phone, and they include Cole, Katie, Deb, and Sarah. And then we also have Nils, who has been supporting quite a few fire modules and using Collector to record the AFUE data. And all of these folks will be helping to answer questions. So please enter questions into the question box, and they will also occasionally chime in with some comments. All right, and I am Chris Ferner. I work for the Esri Disaster Response Program. And so let's see, let's get going. Next slide. All right, so today we'll just go through a little bit more information about how to access the webinar series recordings. We are talking about Collector, what it is, what are the prerequisites, how to set up your device, how to find your map, taking that map offline, and creating data. At that point, we'll mention how to take a base map provided by your GIS specialist, which is also called sideloading, but we probably won't have time to demo that fully. I will point out some resources, and then we'll delve into some questions and answers. All right, so the webinar series, all recordings are posted on Wildfire Lessons Learned page. You do need a login for this page. And the recording from the webinar that was 2 weeks ago, it was an introduction to the NIFC ArcGIS Online Organization. So what is this thing that we're talking about? And that link is showed. You will get a copy of this PowerPoint, and I think we'll send out that with the follow-up email, and thank you for attending. So the next webinar is a week from today, and it is Tech Tips number 2. You will be receiving the invite to that. It is how to start a new incident in ArcGIS Online. The primary audience for that one is GIS specialists or other folks who will be kind of performing that duty as well, and you can be type 3, 4, 5 incidents also. Esri does some other emergency management webinars. They did one this morning for kind of top 10 tips for preparedness. They're doing a structure fire and EMS one next week, and then what I think more people might be interested in is a drone to map webinar on August 4th. So what is Collector? Collector is a mobile app. It connects to the NIFC ArcGIS Online Organization. It's a way for you to collect data, points, lines, polygons while you're in the field and get that data back to the GIS specialist or operations or your IC in a more real-time manner. It's available on iOS, Android, and Windows. There are certain requirements, so I think iOS 4 is not supported. You do need a somewhat newer version of a phone or operating system. Why are we using Collector? This is one of many reasons. This is potentially a GIS nightmare, where you have lots of people collecting information on paper. They bring it in and say, we wrote down the Latin long from our GPS unit, and here are all of the sheets on pre-assessment or structure protection plans, or here are all our pump locations. And then expect GIS to magically get all that information in a matter of minutes into the database and share it on a map. Now, this also is not terribly helpful for your section chiefs or the ICs. They can't see the trends, they can't see the patterns, they can't see any summary information about all the data that's been collected. As a decision maker, they want to see what's going on without the GIS shop having to spend days or hours entering all this information in. Collector can speed up the availability of all of this to ops and decision makers, from hours or days down to minutes or hours, depending on the data flow that's happening. So what are the prerequisites? The first one is that you need an account in the NIFC ArcGIS online organization. And to get that, you will go to the home page and request one. I think pretty much all of you on the phone already have an account. If you don't, we will post in the question box or answers the link to the home page. And on the home page, there's a little address to request an account. Then what else do you need? You need a smart device, a smartphone, a tablet, something that's compatible. You need to download the Collector app onto your phone using your relevant app store or Play Store. And then you also need to have access to a map. Collector requires somebody to set up a map with an editable data layer in it for you to be able to start collecting data. The way the NIFC org is set up, each team has these 5 groups within the website. And the mobile editing group is where the collector maps are shared. And so if you're a data collector, if you're a FOB or ops or anyone going out in the field and gathering intel, then you'll probably need to be in the mobile editing group for the team that you're supporting. I think, so how do you get into a group? If you are a single resource and going out on an incident, you'll need to communicate with your GISS or SIP unit leader to say that you need in that group. If you're having trouble contacting them, then feel free to reach out to the NIFC admins. Their email is kind of all over the place, but it's also shared on the last page of these slides. There are currently 47 mobile editing groups, one for each team plus a couple extra for state response areas. So you won't be able to go in and search, because then you would be flooded with all 300 groups that are out there. So you will have to be in contact with the person managing that incident. And again, as we're going through this, go ahead and ask questions. So those are resources, but I'm going to switch out and go to demo. Windows are all rearranging. So what does collector look like? Let's see. Let me share my phone. In the background here, I just have, oops, not the calendar, a dashboard open. And to view some of the points as they're coming in, a couple of the folks on the phone have access to this map, and feel free to add some data and points as we go. We should see some changing or add a polygon too. So collector, what does it look like? And I am showing an iOS, iPhone 5. It will look different on Android. The icons are switched, so iOS devices put them on the top, Android typically puts them on the bottom. Some of the icons will be slightly different. I will show you where we have resources that include pictures on what the menu buttons look like. So on the home page, you can see collector down here at the bottom. It's a blue icon with a little clipboard. I have already logged in, and when you log in, the first thing you see is the gallery. So the gallery are all the that you have access to edit. Now, if you've been out on a lot of incidents and have been added to 5 or 7 incident management team mobile editing groups, you're still going to see all of those maps in this list. That can start to be a lot. So feel free to drop yourself out of those groups after each incident. Say, I'm not working with that team right now. Remove yourself. You can always be re-added later. If I want to filter this list, because I am in quite a few groups, I can tap on all maps in the top left, and it will show me the names of the groups that I'm currently in. And so see, I've been out with quite a few teams. I know that the current incident is with Rocky Mountain Team Orange, and I'll open it up. Now, the creator of the map did not add a thumbnail or any other information about the map. So I just have to know that this is the map I want. And they should tell you which map to use. Before we get into opening the map, oh, I skipped device setup. Okay, we'll go back to that now. Let's go to device setup. Each phone is different. Each operating system is different. So the setup will be a little, unique to what you're using. On iOS devices, iPads, and iPhones, go into your settings and go into cellular. You want to look at what kinds of apps are using your cell connection. The more things using cell, the more things that are using battery. A couple other battery saving things are notifications. The more notifications you turn off, the less your phone is trying to push and pull information over a network. One good best practice is to put your phone into airplane mode. Whenever you go out in the field, once you're done with all your setup in camp, when you leave and head out, put your phone in airplane mode. That's the best battery saver there really is. And Collector still works in airplane mode. It relies on GPS, not on cell service. Now, for location, to get that GPS, you go to Privacy and then Location Services. Make sure it's on, and you want the two things that are most important are Collector and the camera. If you're tasked with collecting photos, you want them to be geolocated somewhere on the ground. And so if you turn on camera location while using or always, then that will kind of cover that need. But if you have questions about your specific device and how to save battery, if you just Google it, generally you'll come up with a whole slew of suggestions. Okay, so iOS devices, how do you close an app or refresh? If your GIS specialist makes an edit to a map, they may say, I've changed this Rocky Mountain Orange training map. I need you to refresh the map. You can do that any number of ways, one of which is swiping up, and that will close the app when you reopen it. Oh no. Maybe because I'm using it as my phone as well. Okay. I might have to stop sharing for a second and connect again. So let's jump over to show you the groups in the org. So I'll come back to Collector in a second. From the organization, we're going to skip to resources and how do you get around this site. As a field user, you won't need to be on this page very often. You'll just want to come here for resources and to make sure that you have access to the group. So when you click on groups at the top of the page, it'll tell you how many you're a member of. I'm only a member of 5. That's perfect. It's still a lot because they're all mobile editing, so I can still see quite a few maps when I start going through the list. Then when you open the group that you're interested in, I see that there's an actual map in there. From the home page, if I click on Field Resources, that opens the Field Resources group, and this has all the documentation. A couple of these are in draft mode right now. We'll probably post a note on the homepage when they are no longer in draft mode so that you know that they're finalized. But basically, there's some pocket guides with all the menu buttons for Android and iOS. The Windows is very similar to Android, and we do not have a pocket guide for it. Then there is the workflow for field users and 3 documents that came straight from the Esri online help. So you can open those, print them off, and work through the process. Let's see. Do we have any questions that Nils or Katie or anyone can answer that have come up?
We've been answering a few along the way, Fern.
Okay.
Some questions about links. Well, can we provide the links to the various things that you've shown so far at the end of the presentation? And then a question about the Drone to Map webinar. When is that, and where will that be available from?
That is on August 4th, and the link is in the PowerPoint, and I'll make sure we include the PowerPoint when we email all of you following the webinar.
Okay.
And it seems I'm not able to log back into my oh, here we go. I'm using my phone. There we go. Okay. Where'd it go? Okay. Can you see my collector app again? I will assume yes, since nobody can talk.
Not yet. No,
oh, not yet. Okay.
There
How about now?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. So back to collector. For settings, this is very important for GIS and people using collector out in the field. On iPhones, it's this box up in the top. That's a menu button with the arrow coming up out of the top. When I click on that, it gives me the option to go to settings. You can decide whether or not you can use this on cellular or Wi-Fi. Single and continuous data collection. If you're going out in the field to collect structures for pre-assessment plans or pump locations where you're going to be collecting the same thing all day long, then continuous will take some of those attributes, that information that you type in to the comments field or to the feature type, and that'll help keep it the same, as you won't have to do as much data entry each time. Then for iOS only is this preferred attachment size. This is for photos. How large do you actually need the photo? Each time you collect a photo and attach it and try and push it over a network while you're on a fire, you're going to have some bandwidth issues. By nature alone, we have bandwidth issues on fire. So when you are collecting photos, there's a lot of extra considerations to take into play. How large the photo is, how many do you need, and where do you store those? When you attach them, it stores them in collector. Best practices for Android and iOS is to use your camera to take a picture and then to attach it. That way you have a backup picture. Yes. Okay, so done with settings. That option is not available on Android because of the way that cameras are formatted. So all maps, I want to filter down to my mobile editing on orange. I have one map, and it's now showing the preview updated. It's now showing my thumbnail, so I can see what kind of data, where the map was zoomed to. Now, there's a couple things about this map. I can tap on the eye for more information. And there we go. And it'll show me all of the stuff that the creator of the map typed in about this particular map. Then I can open the map. And it's a little slow. There we go. With the map open, I can collect data, work with some of the settings. I'm going to go back. There we go. The other icon that you saw there was a cloud with an arrow going down. On Androids, you'll just see the word download. That means taking your map offline. For every assignment you get on a fire, you're going to want to take your map offline. I don't think there's going to be many cases where you will have complete cell coverage while you're working. So if there's a chance that it's zooming to me, that you're going to lose connectivity during the course of the day, take it offline. Now, it zooms to where you are. That circle, the crosshairs up at the top, when that's filled in, that means it's centered on my current location. When I tap on it, I can move the map, or when it isn't filled in, then I'm no longer centered on my location. If I want to recenter, just tap on that and it will recenter for you. Now, the More button shows me bookmarks, layers, measuring, and base maps in the order that you see them. Again, take a look at the Pocket Guide for a little bit more detail about each one of these buttons. Plus is how you collect a new feature. It starts out by showing you all the points. You will see all of the options. So that is another reason why if you're collecting the same thing over and over again, using continuous data collection might be helpful. All right, so we'll do HelloSpot, incident name, I can type it in. I really dislike typing, so you can also use Siri and do the talk to text. Collector name, me. Date, time, point added. I just click on that and then say done, and it's captured. Now this has most of the fields visible. Rehab, yes. The hell is that? Delete this feature. No. Delete this feature is important if you want to flag something for deletion by your GIS specialist. Now, I've entered in all my information. Should I label it? And at the top, there's a couple of options. I have settings, and that's settings for this point in case I am in dense canopy cover or on the north-facing slope. You may need to change your accuracy. You'll get an error, so I wouldn't do it unless you need to change that. Now, if I don't want to collect this point on the location I'm standing, I can tap on the map at the top, and now it changes, so I can go back to the table. And I can actually move this HelloSpot over to the airport. And a picture. Add. So I want to choose from library or take a photo. What did I just say? Best practice? I'm going to take a picture on my computer. Ooh, that's kind of creepy. Okay, add choose from library. Collector would like to access my photos. Okay. And there's the photo. Now I can click submit. Because I'm still connected via cell, it will automatically post with the attachment, and I will be able to see it on the map. It's going to take a minute to post because it's an attachment. So once I post that with an attachment, in the dashboard here that I have open, I can see what feature types are being created, all the information that was entered, and the photo if there's a photo. Now, if I zoom in, I should be able to see it. There it is. Showed up on top. If I click on it, it has my information. And it should show up. Oops. There we go. And there I also see it on my map. Creating a line is different. I'll show you that. I'm obviously not walking around outside, so it's a little hard to replicate. But if I want to do a proposed dozer line, first, again, you're going to enter in all the information you can. Start with that. And then tap on your map. Notice there's no camera option. You can only attach photos to points. So, stream means start collecting. It's at the bottom right. For lines and polygons, you're going to use that to start, press that, and then start walking. Mills, I know you've worked a lot with lines and streaming. Do you have any tips on collecting lines or polygons?
Well, I don't know. I would try and pay close attention to what the line looks like. It can be, you know, fairly jagged sometimes, depending on your GPS accuracy. So sometimes I like to drop points at certain places where you know you're going to change direction and not use the streaming function. But a lot of our crews really like the streaming function because they can just click stream and walk along. The iPhone or iPad will turn off and they can sort of hold it by their side and they can just keep walking and not worry about it. So they use that a lot, but just be aware that if your line looks a little jagged, it may take a little bit of cleanup if you want a straighter or a little bit cleaner line.
All right, thank you. Yeah, so letting your phone go to sleep is good. It will keep streaming if you do that. I'm going to cancel, discard. Now, I do want to show you how to take this map offline. On Android, click the word download. On iOS, tap, I don't want the notification. Tap on the cloud pointing down. And it's trying. The map was saved to a large extent. So initially, it displays the entire extent of the map, the way it was saved. So for you GIS folks on the phone, keep that in mind, that you can set it up with an initial large extent. You can also add in a whole bunch of bookmarks for people to use. I'm going to zoom in to my incident area. And this is your work area. Mills, you might need to mute again. I'm hearing an echo. And map detail is how much detail do you want to see on the ground? Now, maybe my work area doesn't need to be that big because that's a huge area. How about if I just do a small section? I'm just going to go look at this part and then map detail. What's the resolution? Do I really need to see these people's cars? Probably not. In reality, when I'm out in the field, I don't look at the detail on the phone that much. It's approximate where am I. Now at this point it's giving me estimated size, less than 5 megabytes, and I can click download and it will download the map. I'll go ahead and let that run for a minute, and then I want to come back to iTunes. For iOS devices, you do not need to know everybody's login and password, your Apple ID. There is an option to create a map for your GISs to create a tile package as a base map. What that does is it reduces the amount of time and bandwidth that this download that's happening in the background is using. And so once you have your tile package, you plug the iOS device in, and then I'll tell you how to do it using Android. It's actually much easier. But iOS, you plug it in, you scroll down, you select collector, and you add it into base maps. And so you're taking a TPK, you're taking this tile package from your own computer, your own imagery, your own base data, and adding it to the device. That way you can have a much larger area. You notice what I downloaded was pretty small. This way you could have the full potential region that the fire might burn, hopefully. It's still downloading, but for now I'm going to hop over back to the PowerPoint and look at some of the resources available to you.
Real quick, Farn, on the downloading,
Yeah.
we've had a lot of discussion and a lot of potential issues with this. It's a real fine line about how large of a download you want to download, considering that even when you are in a connected environment, or where I'm expecting you guys to be in a connected environment, is likely not to be the greatest internet either. So you may have to play with that a little bit. You may want a larger extent, and you may want greater detail, but you may have to play with that to find a happy medium with a file size that you can actually download. If there's a poor internet connection, it may take quite a while to download, and sometimes there may be an error as well when you download. So just something to keep in mind when you do download a map, that the file size is pretty important depending on where you are and what the connection is.
It is, even if it's, I mean, that was less than 5 megabytes, and that took a couple minutes. So being aware of that as part of your workflow, as part of your planning for your day in the field, is going to be pretty critical. And that's where having those base maps will help tremendously, because that's the bulk of what you're downloading, is the imagery or the topo map that's in the background. So if you can minimize it and keep that download focused to just the features, then that's going to hopefully help that process a lot. Photos, again, add another potential glitch. One thing that I did not point out in settings, this is, you can set this on each individual device, or the GIS specialist can now set this from the web map as a control by the web map. And that's the very bottom of the screen, synchronization, push only. So this is, do the people in the field need to see edits that are happening around them? Typically, on a lot of projects, they may not. This will only then, when they sync, push data up to the web map and up to the NIFC ArcGIS Online organization. It will not pull the data back to their phones or tablets. So on photo-intensive things, like if you're doing damage assessment or pre-assessment or taking 1 or 2 photos, bear teams, they take a lot of photos, you may want to use this workflow where you say, I only want to be pushing data. I have a job to do that day. I don't necessarily need to pull down everyone else's points and photos because it will do both. And so that is a control that can be set on the web map, but it can also be controlled individually. And that should help with that bandwidth usage. So now that I've downloaded, you'll see that the cloud has 2 arrows up and down. On Android, it will just say the word sync. As I go in and create new points and save them, there will be a little red number next to that. And that's the number of edits that I need to sync and push back up to the web. All right, let's keep moving back to resources. Sorry for the switch around. Okay, so I went over these briefly before. NIFC org resources are the PDFs that have been created by the NIFC admins for workflow for incidents and then 2 pocket guides. There's also created by the Esri Disaster Response Program in training resources, a document that's more geared towards GIS specialists on how to set up a collector project from scratch. This will be a little different than the recommended incident workflow that we'll be covering next week in the webinar, but it contains information, so especially if you're doing anything outside of your standard incident data collection, that might be helpful. And then there's some links on Esri resources. The help pages are very good. They're very comprehensive. They actually, a lot of people who are developers in the sector write these blog articles that cover a lot of information. And then I included 2 links that are specific toward using your own base map or sideloading that base map onto your device. So questions and answers. First off, thanks for coming. Any questions and support needs that you have using this site, email wildfireresponse@gmail.com. If it is an emergency, then we'll probably have another link. You can always contact the Esri Disaster Response Program. Let's go back and look. Were there any questions that we need to address? Not seeing any. Besides the one we already talked about.
I think there's one question that I'm not sure how you guys are handling. One question says, many FOBs will generate much data and some redundant. Where in the workflow does this QA/QC happen? So yeah, that could be a potential problem for you guys.
Yeah, so the workflow is that all the data is being handled by the GIS specialist. And so especially on type 1, type 2 incidents. So when the data gets collected, it'll get pushed up to a web service that then the GIS specialist can view in ArcMap, and they will be able to delete QA/QC. Traditionally, that would be paper, hand-drawn maps, GPS units. The data would all kind of come in later in the day. And now there will be a little shift in that, where people may start to get access in camp to start reviewing that data earlier in the day. Still the same protocols. It needs to be approved by ops. If it's an operational related point, it still has to go through the same approval processes, and it still needs to meet the standards required by NWCG, which are the G-stop for symbology and for naming conventions. But otherwise, it's taking that data instead of them importing it or having to interpret hand-drawn notes. And there are comments. There's a comment field, so as the FOBs are collecting data, they can use the talk to text feature and comment on the points that they're creating if there need to be extra information that comes along with that. So let me look at some of the questions that have not been answered. Okay, so there's a question about the roles. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say there's a question about which base maps download faster, the topo maps or the ortho maps. That's a good question. I would probably guess the topo maps, but that also leads to what kind of map your GIS is making. When you are downloading a map, you don't really get to choose what you're downloading. It's whatever map that is in whatever base map is in the map. So that's a good question to maybe address. I'm not sure what kind of maps your GISs are making. In our project, we have the ortho in there as a layer and the topo maps as the base map. When it downloads, the guys on the ground really like it, but it can be a bear to download sometimes.
Yes, and so we've actually done that in the templates, as include the imagery as the base map and topo as one of the layers. It does increase your time for downloading. I do believe topo is slightly faster, but it also depends on how close you're zoomed into your work area, because there's different resolution levels. So as you zoom, the base map is changing some. So there is going to be an update, probably not until the end of fire season. So just so you know it's coming, that the creator of the web map will be able to determine the download area. Right now, each device you have to go in and select your area of interest. So by the end of the season, we'll be able, or hopefully before the end of the year, we'll be able to go in and say, this is the area I want all of my fobs to use, and it'll basically check out that region for them. So I have one question about ArcGIS Online account. So when everybody gets their NIFC account, you are assigned a role based on what you do on fire. So if you are a GISS, you have a higher permission level. If you are a FOBS or ops, you have a user, which you to use collector, make edits, and then make some maps for yourself. Let's see, other questions that are popping up. We don't have too much more time, but I'll go ahead and cover through some.
Hey Fern, this is Deb. I have one comment for the folks out there.
Yes.
As a GISS, you have control over those roles. So if you have someone out there...
No, they actually don't.
Well, but through emailing the wildfire response group.
Oh, yes.
And so if you have someone out there collecting extra unnecessary data, you can have their role changed so they're not allowed to add data to those maps anymore.
Yep.
Also, you have, train your folks. Have certain fobs in a certain area collecting data there. So Fob Smith, have him collecting in Division Alpha, and then have the other fobs collecting in the other division. Make it clear so that you aren't having to sift through redundant data.
Exactly. We had a lot of redundant data last year on a couple of incidents where I think we had one burned up fence post that had like 10 pictures taken of it. So make sure those assignments are clear, both for those of you who are field folks, make sure that you're not doing the same thing as everybody else who's out there, because that makes more work for your GIS specialist. One comment came in, watch out for nested vertices when streaming. So as you're doing the streaming, it'll plop down points like breadcrumbs. Those are vertices, and it can hide them. So be aware that those exist. Let's see. Signing in with an enterprise account with this particular org, it's set up to be interagency. So if you want us to use an account from another ArcGIS Online site, send us an email and we'll see what we can do. There are limitations in that you're bound to the role that you have and the permission level you have from the original organization. Let's see. I think that's most of them. I will say
there
again,
was a question about map packages, Fern. Is there any standard or workflow on how to create map packages, and can they be stored on FTP or distributed with a QR code?
They can't. So there's a couple of teams that have started kind of as soon as the incident happens, they start generating map packages. You can load those into the org, and people can download them from there. You can put them on the FTP site. What I found is that not everybody who's a field user maybe is familiar with the FTP site as frequently, and so you can put it into one of your team's groups, and then just after your incident you'll want to clean up that information, and that comes with training and getting practice and telling people how to download that and how to move it to an area. Once you're in Collector and doing a download, that is your download area. You cannot change that without basically removing that downloaded map from your device and then re-downloading. You can have separate maps. So on a couple fires in California last year, we did zones, and so that each person could download multiple zones and not have too much stuff in any one map. The data layers were still the same, but they were just different areas. So you could go, Division Alpha, Division Hulu, whatever works. There are some different workflows. Share what you guys are doing, because everyone else who's working in this can benefit from that. If you have suggestions or workflows that are working well for you, shoot us an email, or shoot the NIFC admins an email at wildfireresponse@gmail.com. So in generating TPKs, in the PowerPoint, you'll see there's a link on how to do that and how to create side-loaded base maps. And we may do a whole separate little 30-minute webinar on best practices when doing that. You generally don't need to have the best resolution, and that will save some time. But we're going to call it for today, and we will send you an email this afternoon with the PowerPoint with the link for next week for those of you who are interested. Again, it's kind of geared towards the GIS specialists or folks who will be acting in that role at the start of an incident. So thank you very much for attending, and we hope you have a good cave season.